Hi everyone, I'm Nicholas Drain. I'm here to teach you how to set up the speaker system properly so that you don't get an echo or feedback, and so that your stage is properly set up. Right now, I have all of this gear here. This gear is not set up. So, let's set this up. Now, when you first find the speakers, they'll be in this box. There are two of them, and each one is slightly different. It doesn't matter which one is left or right, but the backs on these are each different. On this one, we have the control board. On this speaker, we have storage for some of the cables. Both of these backs have to come off in order to use the speakers. They both cover this port here, which is the input port for these speakers. The next thing you'll find are these two posts. These are the posts that put the speakers up on the stand. To set these up, simply pull these legs apart. Now, you may have to loosen this knob here in order to make it easy, because this section pulls up. You can also pull from there, from this base, up top. And then simply tighten this knob, that one right there, till it's tight. Then, loosen this upper knob and raise this however high you want. There are little holes here. That's for this pin to go into. It simply slides through one hole. It'll slide through a hole on the back and click. And now it won't come out, and it stops this if this fails from slamming. So, also tighten this off, and now this is a fully extended tripod, and you do this for both of them. Now that you have your two tripods set up at the height that you want, you need to place your speakers on them. So, on the back of these speakers, you'll see this knob. Loosen it, but don't loosen it so far that it comes out. Keep it relatively loose so that it isn't interfering with this hole. Then, you take your speaker and you set it on top of the post, like that. And then, on the back, you tighten the knob to prevent this from coming off vertically or spinning, where it takes more effort to spin. So if I tighten it down a lot, it spins. It's more difficult to spin. Next, you do the same thing with your other one. Place it on, and you tighten the knob. And now, it's difficult to spin as well. And you orient these in the direction that you want. And then you now have your speakers on your tripods. Now that you have your speakers set up, it's time to use the audio interface. This board controls everything. So, here, these 4 rows are each microphone ins. So, in here, you would plug into an XLR cable, and we'll get to that later. And then, each of these knobs adjusts one thing about it. The top one adjusts the treble. The middle one adjusts the bass. The lower one, the lower middle one, adjusts the echo. And the very bottom one adjusts the volume. Now, you have this section of the board as well. This section is your stereo in. So, if you want to play music from a phone, you would plug into this left and right here. And there's a cable specifically for that, included in the kit. And then this knob here adjusts that volume. Then finally, there's the Echo Master, which controls the echo overall. And there's the Volume Master, which controls the overall volume. This is going to be the most used knob. Right now, I have it set at 4, and that has been a reasonable setting for us that we've used in the past for assemblies. So, on this board, you plug in the speakers to these 2 holes. At these arrows, they each say right out or left out. The top one in this case, which the top is determined by the letter orientation, the top one is right out. The bottom one is left out. This is so that if you have stereo sound, it will play from the correct side. This is especially important if you're going to be playing music, because then it will sound correct. So you'll plug in the cables that connect to the speakers into this spot. Finally, there's the power. It's just simply a power switch, and you plug in a power cable that's included in the other box. In this other box, it's currently broken, so you have to pull and press in, and then pull back, and then pull out. It takes some force because it doesn't latch properly since it's not the right size anymore. It'll open, and you'll see cables like this. This brown cable is the power connector for the audio interface. Next, you will have a couple cables that look like this. These are the ones that plug into the right out and the left out. You just simply push it in, then you pull it out. There's little threads on these. Do not worry about the little threads. These don't screw on. They just simply push in, pull out. There's also an auxiliary to stereo cable. This cable is the one that is used for the stereo in. The red plugs into the red. Red is always right. The white plugs into the white. White is always left. This side will plug into whatever music device you're using, whether it be an iPod, a phone, or a computer. This side will always plug into that. Now I'm going to show you how to set up one speaker with the audio interface. First, you need to power the audio interface. Plug in the brown cable into the power outlet. And then plug in that cable to the wall, or in this case, an extension cord. Next, we're going to plug in the speaker into the audio interface. Because I'm standing on stage right at the moment, I'm going to plug into the right-hand side. And then I simply plug into the back of the speaker. And now the speaker is ready to play when I turn it around to face the audience. In the supplementary boxes, you may also find longer cables. If these cables here like this are too short for your uses, then you'll want to grab one of these longer ones. And it still does the same thing. Plugs into the back of this, plugs into the audio interface. These cables are simply longer and still work just the same. These you'll most likely use on the one that's farther on the stage from the audio interface. So this one would be my near speaker, and this one would be my far. Now, you can play things out of your speaker, but you don't have anything to input with. That's where you need a microphone. This microphone uses an XLR cable, like I was talking about earlier. this end. And it connects to the microphone with this end, and it plugs into the audio interface with this. The microphone will be in the box with either the supplementary gear, or it will be in the back of one of the speakers. So this end, simply plug it into whichever line spot you want. I'm going to plug into mic 1. XLR cables are not a universal plug, so they can't plug in upside down. They have to be plugged in the right way. And then you can set it in the mic stand, which will be with the tripods in the storage room. So then you will position your microphone so that it's at your mouth, and now you can speak. Finally, we have the input for music or any other device that is outputting via an auxiliary port. Simply plug it in the 5 and 6 spot, white to white, red to red. Phones like mine don't support auxiliary, so that means they don't have a headphone jack. So you're going to need to get an adapter to plug into either your USB-C or Lightning charging port. That way it can output a sound. So if you do have an auxiliary port, simply plug it in. If you don't have a headphone jack, you'll need to get an adapter, which can be easily found at stores or online, or you can also ask around if you do not have one. Now that we have all this gear here, we need to know how to set it up properly. So let's go to the stage that we're actually going to be using. And this is a properly set up stage. The first and most important thing is that the speakers are facing the audience. However, they should not be directly facing the audience. Instead, they should meet at a point relatively in the middle. So for example, this speaker points towards the middle of the audience rather than straight and directly towards the audience. That way, the left and right sounds converge together. It also allows the sound to sound more full because it's coming directly towards the audience's ears rather than the fronts of their faces. Next, we have the audio interface set up right here. So it's easily accessible by whoever needs to maintain it, turn the volumes on the microphones, or turn it and change the overall volume. All the cables are nice and properly plugged in. You can see the 2 cables here and then the microphone cable. Down here on the ground, we have the cables properly coiled as well as being taped down. This is important so that people don't trip, especially if it's going over walkways. Over here you can see that the microphone is at the podium and it's a reasonable distance away. That way, if someone spits on the microphone or makes an obnoxiously loud sound, it doesn't pound on the microphone and produce a very bad sound for everyone to hear. Also notice that the microphone is here and the speaker is over there. The microphone here is behind the speakers. This prevents any reverb effects from going through the speaker and then continuing through the microphone. That's why it produces the distorted screeching that you can hear. Alright, if someone turns up the volume too high on the speakers. Finally, we have this last speaker over here. What's important to note about this speaker is that its cable, it's a long one, but it runs behind the chairs, which are off over here. And this prevents the cable from having to go all the way in front of the walkway and keeping it a tripping hazard. It's still taped down, as seen by, I can't pull it up, but it's not in the majority of people's walkways, which is very important because a tripping hazard is not good and it can derail an entire event. Finally, to tear down your stage setup and your speakers, you need to just reverse this process and pack it up the way you found it. The way you found it should be packed correctly. So if you pack it up that way, it will be fine for the next people, and this process can keep repeating.